Okay, welcome back. We were talking about the thumb. We introduced the structure of the thumb and discussed some of the structure and the bend and the distance from hand itself and the length and the shortness of the thumb. I did cover a little bit of the parts, but now I'm going to cover it in more detail. Okay, so we discussed that that these two, the first one is the logic and the willpower. So the one with the fingernail, then we discussed on the number one, two, and three, number one, two, and three. So number one, two, and three. So we'll just discuss one and two. So number one is logic and your willpower. So I did touch a little bit on the person's will and the logic and how a person can react as compared to the rest of the hand, and how the general or the boss is going to be to have his soldiers along with it, who's the fighters, and they can actually the pawns they can actually support is king and the queen. Both, if though both are equally nice, if will, logic and will, they're both equal, nice. The proportion is not off. They look very proportionally equal to each other. It's a nice balanced personality. So this is the spectrum. Out of this, out of that. So this is norm. So short portions. Portions are comparatively short, either this one or that one. So short, normal are equal, and too tall from each other. So naturally, maybe the first one is normal, but this is too tall. So you usually find a lot of people with this very, very tall. This is very common, that this second portion is very tall. So they can extend a lot. But this may be normal. It may appear to be small because this is very long. When this is long, this may appear small, but it is not. So you will have to do a very close lookup to see if actually one of them is shorter and the other one is long. It could be that this is very short and this is very tall. Or it could be this is normal size and this is really tall. So, so you will have to be more careful. But as long as this is balanced, this is normal size. And like in my case, you can see they're almost the same size. Square, nice. On the top, a little bit intuitive. Slightly bend, okay. So little flexibility. Here, little firm. Firm because you need to be firm because that's your willpower is. So willpower needs firmness, to do something. Like these videos, I've been asked to transfer my knowledge to you guys. Okay, so people have videos made for monetary benefits and all that. So my one of my teachers, he says, teachers in some other faculty, said, don't take it with you, what you have studied in so many decades. So why don't you share? So, well, this is knowledge. I'm not going to charge anybody for knowledge or whatever. If there's an expense, it can offset the expense. That's another issue. But I'm not going to do it. So now my willpower is so firm that I get up, I stand here before you, and I talk for hours and hours. I have already made, posted 20 videos in English and 3 videos in Urdu. And I have already made yesterday 2 in Urdu, and now this is second in English. So it's going to be 22 plus 5. So 25 videos within the month. It's almost on an average. It's like a daily or an every other day. So, and I'm going, and it's just the beginning. I claim that nobody will ever tell you anything like this, a knowledge in this detail. Nobody will. on the YouTube, I challenge you that you will have this much of detail that is trying to make you understand everything that is about the hand. I'm transferring everything that I've read to you. It's your job to understand what I'm trying to tell you. The structure is the canvas itself, it's the model, like a Rolls Royce. So when you know it's Rolls Royce, you know what it comes with. You know it's a Mercedes, you know what it comes with. And if you know it's an airplane, you know it flies in the air. The car runs on the road. So it gives you a general impression when you talk about a product. A refrigerator, you say, okay, it's a cooling box. It's something that you can place in and it saves your food. Okay, so you know about the product. So hand structure of the hand itself gives you an overall impression of you, who you are, what kind of a person. Are you aggressive? Are you inward? You're outward? How your faculties are. So if you have a very midget, very small close thumb, what is going to happen? Even if you have a great brain line, you are not using your brain. It doesn't let you do that. So you have to. So I look into, yesterday, I look into a Mars person. A Mars in the 12th house is bringing the person down. Is the negative thing about the great things about the person. So I spent 3 hours just talking about the Mars itself being in the 12th house. 3 hours. Why you need to go away? It's because that's a drag. So you have a plane that is going to fly. So when a plane flies, it has 4 forces of weight, lift, thrust, and drag. So 4 forces equalize, it becomes equilibrium, and it flies in the air. So it keeps moving. So you have more thrust and it keeps going. Okay, so when if you put more weight, more than the airplane is designed to take, if you put more weight, let's say it takes two passengers and 2 suitcases of 50 pounds, or 20 kilos. So you put another box, it will have a hard time flying up because you have reached over the maximum limit. So same way, if you have a drag, no matter how many qualities you have. So in the previous video, I discussed this one. So if you have a drag here or there or there or there or here, anywhere, then that person is holding back. His luck is not as good. I've seen people with the first house Jupiter. They're supposed to be very, very energetic, very, very active people, luck by action. They should be making something, but they're not. Sometimes they don't. So you will have to see if your thumb is very small and too close. So that's why the logic and the willpower has to be a balanced approach. Too much of logic, like in the very beginning of the last video, too much of logic, too much of willpower. It's not going to help you out. You have to have a balance of both. If too much logic and less willpower, again, then if you see that, for example, now let me give me a remedy of it. What do you do in this situation? So what you do is, if a person has good logic, like in the previous video I said, and you see a good brain line coming down to Mount of Luna, okay, here on the very bottom of it, here coming down. So you can say person has a good brain because faculties are not as sharp. He's not as educated, but he has an inner ability, a capability of doing something. The person has too much of a logic. Now, but his logic is like the long finger, very long finger one, person is undecisive. So, okay, his willpower is low. So he's not able to. So you can suggest to the person, you know what, why don't you try to write, you have, just, keep writing something, maybe write short stories, do a literature thing, do a critical analysis, do something. That is more creative where you don't require a lot of willpower. So to compensate for the lack of something, a faculty that is not in your hand or in your subject's hand, if there's a lacking faculty, you look at the lacking. I usually look at what is the deficiency in the person, not because what person is good at. Okay, so if a person is very rich, extremely rich, has cars and everything, but his bad luck is coming from a spouse, for example, who's going to divorce him soon enough and take half of the wealth, put the person in the misery, then person may have to jump off the bridge emotionally, heart line. See that? So no, richness is fortune is because you have good wealth, you have good life, you have good faculties, you have a happy life. So in order to have a happy life, you need to work on the weaknesses that are the faculties that have not grown properly, not improved properly. So you will see, and I advocate that the hand changes according to how strong you get. It has to be strong enough, like a prayer. When you pray, everybody says, "Oh, my prayers are not accepted," but yet it is well known that prayers come true. They are accepted. But whose prayers are accepted? The people who pray with sincere, with utmost concentration and will and desire. They have a force behind it. Then the whole body, your mind, your soul, your intellect, your faculties start to work towards it. So when you have the desire to make money and say, "Oh, God, give me money," then God you instill those desires within you and you say, "Okay, I'm going to go out and do something about it." When you go out and do something about it, God says, "Okay, now give him the blessings or her the blessings." And then you become, you change. So same way, when your faculties, your brain and soul and body, when it concentrates on something, the changes happen in your hand. They're there. You can't see them. You will have to, once you get an expert on this, you will start to. I know the person for 20, 30 years, divorced, doesn't want to marry again. So I convinced him. It took 10 years to convince him to get married. He said, "But there's no luck line. Everybody says that I don't have a second marriage." I said, "You have a second marriage. I see a literally, half the millimeter, literally micromillimeter. I could just see a little. I said, "You do have, but you have to develop on it. You have to make it move. And it did happen. Person, 10 years later, person got married, has children. I think I mentioned it one of the videos before, in the past videos. But again, I need to repeat it because your willpower. So because we are talking about the willpower, this is all where it's because this is the boss. This is where it's happening. So you need to make sure your logic and your willpower is equal. If there is a change, if one is less, the other is more, or vice versa, you need to understand that how to compensate for that lack or excessive or less faculty. So this is where the art is actually. So it's not like, you're saying, "Okay, fine, you're going to go to hell and you're going to hell." That's fortune telling. Okay. So never do that. Look at the hand, see what is wrong with the person, suggest. Say, "Okay, this is where you are weak. This is how you can come out," because you should understand the personality of the person from the hand, because there are strengths elsewhere. Probably those strengths have not been explored properly, because this negative thing has been so much on top of the person. A person, let's say, a person just went through a divorce. He doesn't like to eat, no clothes, things are happening, life is upside down. There's no life. There's no life at all. So what do you expect from that person? Say, hey, wait a minute, you know what? I know a person who got divorced. I say, you know what? You're gonna cry, for a year or so. And as soon as you're gonna meet a nice woman, you're gonna forget about the first one. I said, is that so? That's how it works. It's always someone for you. So don't be pressurized under the negativities that come from your life. So suggest to them what is good in their hand, because when you're reading the hand, you're also looking at the negative as well as the positive things. So where when you talk about the negative, you tell them how to compensate it for the positive. So if there's a lack of logic, so what is good is the willpower. So submission probably. So like you can go and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to volunteer for this thing. So you don't need to have your own logic to do something. You just go and do it for other people. You just follow other people in some goodness, and you'll always be good. So will actually, your logic will form as you go, and when you start to see those poor people who deserve something more in their life, you help them. So slowly and gradually, your willpower will, your logic will develop on that. I say, okay, because now your faculties are polishing, they are growing. Now your logic will become stronger and stronger and stronger. So you will have to guide the person into the right direction by looking at it. Okay, so if the portion of logic, it grows up too much, like we said, the person becomes undecisive. It's like too much time holding on with the logic, spending too much time on the logic, and being undecisive. So it's like a bottom line about the logic itself. So though the person is very intellectual, he's is good. His brain faculty is good because it's a long logic. But long logic is not going to help because if you are undecisive. So you need to have a long, if this is long and it's laying, because the energy goes upward. So if logic is released here after calculations and you have made up your mind, and then it goes handed over, the decision is handed over to willpower. So willpower here, so the first one. So the willpower will take over and act upon it. So you create a logic, you act upon it. Create logic, and whatever you do in your life, for eating or whatever you want to do. So you could be just thinking, standing in the kitchen for 10 minutes and trying to see, okay, shall I take this, or shall I toast one egg or two eggs, or shall I take orange juice or whatever. So undecisive, too much. Even though you are intellectual, you say, okay, I need to take more fruits and I need to take less fats. And now you're calculating, you're using your brain, but your brain becomes very, very, again, long. If it's long, you're spending too much time on it. It's naughty. It's not naughty. It's going to help you do a critical analysis, a critical thinking. But make sure the balance of the two is always a good personality. Any of them, if the will or the logic is out of proportion, then that has to be. If a person with a small logic is going to be with no faculties, too much long is going to be undecisive. So the willpower doesn't get any benefit from that kind of attitude. So you have to look at a balance, a nice balance, and then placement of the thumb itself. How far it is, how upward it goes, how much, what's the angle. Overall, thumb is small or big, and then the portions itself, and adding pinch of salt to it. And on the other hand, there's one point that now you have a bigger. I did touch a little bit on the will and willpower. If you have a bigger will, this part is bigger, the willpower is bigger, and then the will itself is too much, and this logic is less. So let's say as I said, if there's no logic and you go on a will, so where are you going? So usually the problem with one negative thing that can happen is that if you jump on a conclusion, I have already touched it, if you jump on a conclusion, a person jumps on a conclusion, you can't convince them. And this person could have a very adverse problems in trying to pursue useless things, waste of time, energy, and resources. And because it's a lot of willpower, so the person could be a road roller, you can just crush everything that comes underneath. So it's like unstoppable. Because there's no logic, a person goes, dictators, for example, in some extent. Some dictators could be productive, logical, even though it's a dictatorship. I'm not trying to justify them, but what I'm saying is they have, they're ruthless, and they have strong willpower to do something, and either they can have logic or no logic. So usually in the leadership, the people that has logic plus the willpower, it's a very balanced person. So if you have a person with a lot of willpower, no logic, you want to be aware of them, that they can actually be ruthless. In ruthless, they could be a little more oppressive. So you can expect. Usually, when that oppression happens, you will see a little more crooked kind of a thumb. You will see the thumb is slightly, it's not nice looking, it's not beautiful, it doesn't appear to be, photogenic type of, with a beauty kind of thing. It looks kind of a crooked, ugly, out of proportion, maybe something more. We'll go more in detail as we proceed. We'll keep on adding more information about thumbs and all that. So if it's more meaty, or it's more skinny, or it's more bony, or something like that, so you will have to look at it, how that will is being channelized, outgoing, because that's the king, that's the general who is doing it. And then again, you have to see where the pawn, where the army is. Okay, back to lesson number 1 about the structure. The structure of the hand was like 3 kinds, and 4th kind was mix. So first is the pointed hands, the conical hands, and the square hands, and the flat hands. Now, a thumb could be the same way. A thumb could be a pointed thumb, like I have slightly pointed, slightly, you can see, slightly, rounding up on the top. It's a square. Fundamentally, it's a square, but giving a touch of. I can show you where all these top fingers are really square. I think I've been sharing it in the previous videos. It's just one hand that is very, very square. Everything is square about it. So it's slightly pointed, but some thumbs will be really very nicely coming down and being really narrow. You will see them, they are very prominently narrow, not like mine, but there you can actually tell, oh, you know what, it's pointed, it's narrow, it's pointed. So it's conical. So, and then within that is a square. It could be absolutely square, or it could be flat. So now we discussed that, the conical are more intuitive, more spirituality, more towards faculties that are more related to brain and soul and inward. And square is the personality which is a part of the whole society. It's a practical person. He's always there, 9 to 5, working. He's like the chain, that holds the whole chain together. So it's the anchor and part of the society. Without him, the society will fall apart, because he's the integral part of the society. On the other hand, the flat is more industrious, more outgoing, more outspoken, more entrepreneurial, doing things at its own pace, and very powerful, very energetic person. but more independent, entirely independent. So this independence is on the different side, and this is on the other side of it, and the person in the middle. So if the thumb itself has a pointed first nail portion, which is will, then you have a more intuitive will. So you take the intuition, you guess the not really guess, it's more intuitive person has more things coming true. So so intuitive person will be more inward, more spiritual, or more intellectual to within its own inside faculties. And if it's square, then person is more practical. His willpower is strong. If logic, let's say, I'm assuming the both portions are equal, it's a normal personality. So then the square will be person who is going out, working really hard, is helping out the street out there, is helping out perhaps the old lady at the end of the street, or some orphanage. He goes out and volunteers himself. His logic, he creates a logic, and his willpower, he's part of the society. He's very practical. He's doing things all day long. And if it's flat, his willpower strong, everything is balanced, the person goes out and says, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to jump 125,000 feet from the outer space into the, they do it. They're industrious. They will do those kind of things. They have strong willpower. They have logic. They create the logic for that. So all three fundamental structure can be applied on all fingers, including the thumb, 4 fingers and the thumb. And we'll talk more about this as we keep going. Because the thumb is the personality, is the king of the hand, whole hand is the boss. So now if you have a pointed, narrow, a narrowness, we discussed even the narrow hand and the closed hand, and especially a thumb which is closed and narrow and on the top, then this person has a very indecisive kind of a personality, because the thumb itself should be very outgoing. This is me, look at me, you're like standing in front of the mic in front of 10,000 people and speaking, a leader, or showing yourself, or you're on the TV, or you are on the YouTube, or you are here and you are there, and you are trying to put yourself forward and you're showing. The person with the narrow is more inward, like I say, they're more intuitive, maybe inward. And then again, if it comes from positive to negative side of it, as it closes up, it's small and short and narrow. The person is really, really a mean person, an undecisive person. He doesn't know what to do with him or herself in the life. And also, because this is general, so how daring you are. How daring a person is also, with the study of thumb, you can find out the dareness of a person. The person who is very daring is a strong, nice, well-balanced thumb, is going to be a daring, bold, friendly person, not afraid of anything. But as this thumb starts to go down, smaller and closer to the hand and trying to hide itself, then the energies are going backward, they're going inward. The person is now afraid of saying something, presenting something, doing something, because the logic is poor, the willpower is poor, and the person is afraid of, or maybe I can be targeted. Remember, we talked about the pointed hands, and then pointed and the closed hands without gap. That these people they don't want to express themselves. They are afraid that people will judge them, so they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to use words. I end up saying something, not being able to pronounce certain words, or when I'm extempore. This is like I haven't prepared any lecture. I know that I'm going to talk about. I do have bullet points just to stay So other than the bullet points, I'm not prepared. So I keep saying, so when I'm saying, so my brain and my logic and the right words I'm trying to use, sometimes I want to say, really, a person who is like, this person is a mean person. But you know what? On YouTube or on a channel, I can't say about a person that he's a mean person. I have to instantly find some reasonable word. But I do say it and slowly, if I have to say this word, I have to find a more alternate suitable situation, a sentence, or to say the same word, so that it doesn't become so critical or more, offensive. So my brain is constantly working with the words, with the knowledge itself, and trying to express my hand. And I'm also trying to not give you more of my hand, so you don't want to have to. It's a very balanced hand. So, but again, I have put enough light so that it's so light that you can't see my small lines, or that it's just a structure that you can see. So anyway, I don't mind either. Again, I do have a wide, and a reasonable gap, so I can talk about me, and I have discussed that. So anyway, so when you look at that, you make a decision and you see that person who has the pointed and small and very close to their hand thumb, the person is not as brave, probably not brave at all, scared of the external environment. So if you see a person, you need to encourage. You have to do the remedy. See where the courage lies for the person. Maybe the person is afraid of, let's say, traffic or being among the people. That's fine. That's the way he's made. You can't change that. So where is he more comfortable? So you find a comfort level, a comfort zone for the person. It should be right in the hand, that where this person need to be it should be able to disclose himself, open up in certain areas of the certain faculties. Maybe, like I say, maybe he's brainy and he wants to write down something. He wants to write stories or novels, or a CIA film, or maybe a Fast and Furious kind of thing, action movie, or drama, or those kind of things. The person can be isolated, serving himself, being whatever, brave or whatever, doesn't have to be. So the only time we will need bravery is when he has to present that kind of whatever he created. So that where this is, those publishers come in, they look at the material and say, what, okay, this is good or bad. So, and this is how a lot of people get published. They don't find confidence in the first place. They are not sure if they're going to get published. For years and years, they work on their work, on their creativity, on their product, whatever they wrote or they created, and then they sit on it. Many people have been published after they died because they had something great, but they didn't publish it because they didn't have the courage. So, look at that thumb and see how much courage a person has before you suggest anything. If a person doesn't have a courage, you don't tell him to go to America or go to Japan or go to Mount Everest or have vacation in the Caribbeans. Don't suggest anything, because the person doesn't have a strong willpower. He doesn't have his person inward. You are telling the person to go to the place where a lot of people are. So suggest to the person where there's more isolation, maybe a beach, lonely beach, where a person can sit down in the sun, have a nice newspaper, or write down something, and write a song maybe. So, those kind of suggestions. We covered the square already. This person is part normal personality, normal part of the society. He's always there, is confident, very down-to-earth, humble person, because he's not afraid of anything. He's not outward too much. He's not inward. He's just the right balance, right in the middle, because the top one thumb, the willpower lies within the norms of the society. This because he's part and parcel of the society. He is always out there helping, doing something. I know here is have a national park. It is run by volunteers of this town, and they are always doing. They're people like who have retired. They're really like 70, 80, 90 years old. You will find them going and doing things, always doing something there. They're part of the society. They're doing it for other people. They whatever they can do, they're doing. So these people are square fingers, square nails, and square thumb, or square thumb with the square nail on the meaning the first portion. They're very practical people. They're wise. Pay attention to them. Similarly, the flat, like I said, very industrious, very powerful in doing. As you start to go from pointed hand to square, and then the flat people are more industrious, more entrepreneurial. They're more outgoing. They release their link with the society, and they go outward. They hardly look backward. So backward means towards the relationship. They may go out and not come back home for 6 months. Go into the space and jump out there. They're external people. They're doing things outward. They're doing outdoors. They're always outdoors. So that's the flat one. And we already discussed, also the flexibility within that. Flexibility is very, very important with the thumb. When you're looking at the shape, the size, the size of the portion, and then flexibility. Like in the very beginning, I have already covered that if this is logic, how strong, how stiff your logic is, how balanced and your willpower and logic is. The balance, like I say, okay, I'm lucky I have a pretty much balance of both. Okay, not too long, not too short, almost there, giving a slight impression of being, okay, now, yeah. Okay, now. So you see that it's almost slight tall, this little squarish. So this is how you'll be looking overall in all the qualities, and then you make a judgment. I hope this helps. Let me see what is our next step. One more thing that, if we talk about the strong thumb, like it also shows a very strong willpower. These people are like determined people. You can put them on something to do something. And I've already talked about myself, just to give you an example. So, what? Okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And then I will go all the way doing it. That's firmness of your thumb. One thing I actually left out is that thumbs could actually be inward, like the top portion, the first portion, the nail portion of the thumb, like it can be bent inward, it can be actually bent. Like the fingers, remember we talked about the fingers being bending towards, actually bending, not if one is like tilting like this towards each other. That was one lesson we talked about. Then there was a finger actually, I was able to do this was, okay. I was able to actually tilt at the top, only the top portion. It actually bends like this naturally. I'm doing it so much then probably. Sometimes you have this one, in the very beginning I said some people smoke, so they hold their cigarette here. So you will have a slight bend but you will see the yellow nicotine marks here, so you know a person, you can smell the person if he's a smoker, then you can explain that bend. But otherwise, if it's a natural bend, so like this, because I'm able to bend with forcefully. So like on the top, if it's bend, the top portion, if your thumb is bent like inward, not outward, but inward, so they can be like this, okay, like inward, all right. So if they're inward towards the hand, they bend towards hand. Very bad. Very bad. You want to look at them very closely and be very careful when you give them the judgment. Try not to be very specific with them. This is a warning I'm telling you. This is a warning. If you see these kind of people, do not go in details. Do not tell them too much. Be very diplomatic. Be very wise, and see what you can use better words than I have used or I can use. Maybe you have better words to explain things, or you can say it very nicely to them if you have to. So, but there's a word of caution. And here are the following things that can happen. It's a very cruel person. I'm going to use the very word that I never wanted to. A person with a bend inside. It's a cruel person. People are afraid of him or her. They can be ruthless. They can be merciless. They can be like a real road roller. And depending upon the rest of the things that I already spoken about, about the condition of the hand and the condition of the thumb, all those testimonies coming from the length and the smallness and the tilt and the close and the angle itself. And with that, if this is bent, or with other negatives, if this is bent, the person could be a merciless person who can just do anything. So you have to be careful. Such person can have roadblocks for himself or herself. Such person can create, because there is a response, there is a reaction to every action. So because these people are like bulldozers, like they can just crush anyone. So there are consequences too. So these people end up, don't want to name, some of the head of the states, they were removed out of their offices by the world. They just ruthlessly, they went around, and I don't know if I haven't seen their thumbs, and I would love to, because this thought just occurred to me that if I was going to mention their name, and then wait a minute. First of all, I don't know their thumb, so I shouldn't be making their name. But I can pinpoint the characteristics that this kind of a person. So usually if I see a hand and I say, okay, there's too much of a water element in you, and are you Scorpio or you're Pisces? So that means that from hand, you could tell the qualities of a hand. Or you can take the qualities and say, okay, this kind of a person should have this kind of a hand. You understand what I'm trying to say? So if a person who's a dictator, oppressor, ruthless, and it could be an ordinary person in your life, a neighbor next door, or a person in your a class fellow, or a colleague in at your workplace. It could be anybody who is just ruthless. He doesn't care. He just road rolls everything that come across. And everybody's kind of especially if this person happens to be your boss or somebody who's in the authority. Wow, you have a problem here. So the more the bend, the worse it gets. Again, you know what? A tendency, whatever tendency, if hand is normal looking, beautiful looking, no problem. Everybody very, very balanced personality. But if it goes the other way, too much wide, too much closed, too much bends, too much less gap, too much gap, then you are talking about, not all of them are necessary. I hate to use the word that there is something wrong with a person. It's a tendency with a person. Maybe even a very bent hand has a good tendencies in it, but depending upon the rest of the hand. But because it's a thumb, is the king, is the general of the army that we're talking about, the chief of the army that is holding the whole army here. So he's the most. So this is the characteristics. This is the main leading factor in that personality. So the personality becomes. So that's why the personality becomes more logical or less logical, or more willpower or less willpower, or crooked or a kind or oppressive nature. So the more it bends towards the inside, towards the hand, the bend. As it bends more, the more crooked nature it becomes, the more oppressive nature it becomes, more scarier it gets. So where if a hand goes outward, if the thumb goes outward, it's more lavish, more extravagance. Remember we used that word. It's more extravagance. The person is a spender. The thumb, if it goes inward, the person is a miser, or he collects the money. He or she is going to accumulate wealth by all means. And accumulation, doesn't want to spend more. It's not as generous as it. The person outward is the one which burns this way or the other way, away from the hand, or nicely towards backward. But if it's towards inside, like making like a hammer, like if it's growing up inward, then person is going to be a collector by oppression of wealth and all that. So on a good note, just to make it a good day. So a normal person, if you're going for a charity, going to ask somebody for charity, go with the person who has the normal thumb, more beautiful, more average thumb, balance, slightly equal and the portions, and then slight bend, not too much bend, because he's going to listen, and not act. So you don't want to go to that person who has too much bend and too much inward and too much of everything. A normal person. So a normal personality, if the bend itself describes the generosity of a person, generous this way, miser that way, so very well balanced, in spending, in giving, donations, and those kind of things. So you will see that those people are more like they are in more charities, and they give more to the charities, and people are, whatever they have, they contribute less or more they contribute, because they are not accumulating. The person here is just too much spender. He doesn't have money. The person who is outward has too much money, of flexibility. He won't listen. But inward is too much miser. So you have to look at it. Okay, so I'll conclude the thumb with this. I was thinking making 4, but I think I talked so much. Each one of them became like almost 50 minutes each. So I always think of doing 10 minutes, so that it's easier for you to watch. But I keep them, once I talk, it's an idea that is coming. It's the knowledge that is pouring out, and I don't want to stop it. So please pardon me on that, because, I'm helpless in that. My willpower is not that strong in stopping myself. I can put myself in motion, but my brakes are, not so good. So I keep going and going and going, and I can go on and on because I've read so much. But it's not that, I don't want to be, too much proud on because knowledge is never enough. It's never enough. So it's so much psychology of a person, so much of a physique and being of a person that is involved here. So you need to be very, very careful in studying. Once you have made up your mind positively, there are testimonies, then you go. So you make all the fingers and the thumb. So we have talked about the general structures, and we are going to now go into each finger. So we started off with the whole hand, the structure, then we discussed the palm and the fingers. Now thumb, after thumb, first finger, second, third, and fourth. Okay, so one by one we'll cover all the fingers, and probably with that, and then we go on to the lifeline and so on and so forth. So that concludes the structure on that part, and the thumb covers the thumb. We're going to cover the rest of the fingers. Till then, probably it'll be next week now, sometime next week. This is already 3 videos now, 2 videos in Urdu and 2 in English, so 4 videos. I have to compile them and upload, which is the hardest part. So I'll see you next week sometime with the next video on rest of the fingers. And take care of yourself.